Hello, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast. It's your boy, Day.
And I'm David, and together we are Call Me Limbo. Today we are creating conversations, and we have such a great guest lined up for you all. I am so excited to talk to her. She is a future Friend of Phoebe Award winner. That's the award that we give out every year for people who are doing really great work. So just so you know. She's an incredible defender of democracy. She runs a DMV with a 4.8 star rating on Google with over 10,000 reviews, which I think is pretty cool. She's one of the country's leading experts on elections, voting rights, and redistricting, where her work has been featured in the Washington Post, Time Magazine, the Boston Globe, Colorado Public Radio, and now Call Me Limbo. Please welcome to the podcast the current Jefferson County Clerk and Recorder and the winner of the Democratic Party primary for Colorado Secretary of State, receiving the most votes of any candidate in a contested primary for both parties in this most recent election. And I'm going to call it right now. The next Secretary of State for Colorado, Amanda Gonzalez, is here.
Hello. It's so good to see you.
I forgot that we can add applause. So yay.
I'm just going to take that with me everywhere.
Yeah, please. So,
I left the dentist today because I'm like doing all of the adulting that I didn't do during the primary campaign. I feel like I deserved that as I walked out of the dentist office for doing the adulting today.
You do. As someone who also went to the dentist last week. Same thing. So yes. But yes, Amanda, thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you. I also need to do a disclosure. I'm very biased in this interview. I think Amanda will be an incredible Secretary of State. I have donated to her campaign. I attended a fundraiser for you that was hosted by our most recent guest, Dr. Lisa Calderon, who is also an endorser of you. And I voted for you in the primary, and I will be doing it again in the general election. So consider, as you are listening to this, please acknowledge my bias, but also please lean into my bias because I think Amanda's really great.
And only trust the questions that I ask because I'm unbiased and someone who doesn't live in Colorado. Not kidding.
Yes, but Day has the first question, so go ahead.
Yes, so I think it's important, everyone knows I do not live in Colorado, but I think it's important as we're engaging with a lot of public servants that we really set the tone so people understand exactly what it is that we do. So I think a lot of people hear Secretary of State and immediately think about the federal government. So if you had 60 seconds, how would you explain what Colorado's Secretary of State actually does and what powers people might be surprised that the office has?
Yeah, it's extra confusing, right? Because it's different from a Secretary of State at the federal level. It's a position that sounds like it makes copies. Like, what does a secretary do? So absolutely. The short version is that Colorado's Secretary of State is our state's democracy defender in chief. I think the most important thing that this role does is oversee elections for the entire state. And I am running because I want to make sure that every eligible voter is able to cast their ballot and have their ballot accurately counted. There's lots of other important pieces. I just, in this moment where we are fighting like hell to protect the right to vote, I just think that is the most important. But the office also oversees campaign finance. So if you're trying to figure out who is trying to pay to influence your vote, you can go check that out on the Secretary of State's website. It's also where you register your business in Colorado. They oversee a bunch of other things like bingos and raffles. Mm-hmm. So lots of important work, but primarily elections and making sure that every eligible voter's voice is heard.
Yeah. We're going to talk about elections. We're also going to talk about the other things that you mentioned. I have like 4 different LLCs in Colorado. So I was like, I engage, and I'm an accountant during the day. So I was like, I engage with the Secretary of State's office on the business side quite a bit. And so I'm curious to hear some of your ideas there. But Day set us up really nicely with kind of what the role does. Why do you want to be in this role? Why do you want to be the Secretary of State specifically?
Yeah. So as you mentioned in the lead in there, I'm a bit of a nerd. I am an attorney by training. I've taught election law at the University of Denver's Law School. I was formerly the executive director of a nonpartisan voting rights nonprofit called Colorado Common Cause, where I wrote a number of the state's voting and election laws. And so I have been doing this work for almost my entire career. I know how to protect, defend, and expand our democracy. And, like I said, I can get real nerdy, but this isn't academic, right? Like, you have to protect the right to vote if you want a say in any other policy that impacts your life, right? Whether you care about your kids being able to go to a safe school because we have, sensible gun laws, or you care about the water you drink being clean, or your neighbors being able to afford their rent and their groceries in the same month, right? All of that requires protecting the right to vote. And so I am not somebody that actually ever thought that I would run for office. Um,
Mm,
but I am somebody that cares a hell of a lot about voting and democracy and making sure our voices are heard. And so that's why I'm doing this.
yeah, I love that. So, well, thank you for running, and congratulations too on your victory. You were like, you really did. Wasn't it like 70% of the vote that you were getting?
We won by 29 points,
Wow.
and I say we because this really was a grassroots campaign and continues to be. Um, We were not the big institution. I currently hold an elected position. I run elections for Jefferson County, which is Colorado's third largest county. Run elections for about 500,000 people. But, I'm not somebody that's been in politics my entire life. And we did not have a bunch of political consultants on this campaign. In fact, it was mostly my book club
Oh my
that stepped up and was like, and just took on huge pieces of the campaign. We had people volunteering at points like 40 hours a week to make sure that we got this over the finish line. And so, yeah, it feels really, really good. It's been the best group project ever.
yeah, I love this. What's the
Yeah,
most recent
we.
book that you all read? I'm just curious.
Girl, I wish I could tell you that I've been reading all the books. I actually have been doing like a lot of audiobooks because I am in my car
That is still
driving out
reading.
to all these functions.
That is
Um,
still reading.
Yes, but I have not, they've forgiven me. They've still let me come, even though I have not kept up with the assigned reading.
That's okay. It's community though. It's community though. And it was like, and speaking of
Yeah.
community, I was like, I'm going to use Will because I was like, the Democrat is highly likely, which is you, to win
Uh-huh.
the general election for the Secretary of State role
Uh,
in November. But so
yeah.
you, when you're elected, that's how I'm going to
Mhm.
talk. We're going to
We're
manifest it.
manifesting.
Yes, yes. You will make history as Colorado's first Latina and first openly LGBTQ Secretary of State once you win the general election. Day and I are both members of the LGBTQ community as well. And so we say that like pride is
What?
365. Yeah,
You're gay?
I'll speak for
Stickers!
myself. But Amanda, why is this type of visibility important in a role like the Secretary of State?
Yeah. I mean, representation is important. I always say, like, I don't know about you all, but I have been the CEO of small businesses. I've run nonprofits, and I have at times made some boneheaded decisions because the table around me was not diverse enough. Right? We make better decisions when we have all different kinds of people around the table. And they can say, like, hey, have you thought about it this way? Or have you thought about the way it's going to impact this community? Um, and so I think representation is important for that reason, is that our communities, our state, our democratic systems are better when we have lots of different kinds of people and different viewpoints at the table. But it's not just about who we are, but I think it's also about what we fight for,
Hmm.
right? Like my grandmother was undocumented when she first got to the United States. People ask me all the time, like, "Oh, you're going to be the first Latina. Are you bilingual?" And I'm not, because my dad, didn't get to be proud of his heritage in the way that I get to be proud of mine, right? That is something that I think we're improving over the generations. And I know what's at stake, right? Like I know what it means for families to come to the United States because they want to make a good life for themselves, for their family. They want to work hard. I know what it means if our government is going to turn its back on certain pockets of people, right? Not hold folks like ICE accountable, right? Like it's not an academic exercise. Um, and I think it's really important that we have folks with that kind of lived experience at every level of government.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, you talked a little bit earlier too about being the author and like creating and writing a lot of the legislation that has made Colorado I would say the gold standard. And I don't think I'm the only one that says that for elections across the country. And so like that's work that you should be really, really proud of. And I remember seeing on your website that Colorado's first in the nation jail voting law, SB 24072, that you helped draft and pass, is the career moment that you are most proud of that you had on your website. And I
Yeah.
think often people who are incarcerated are forgotten, but you wanted to bring people in jail into the electoral system. And
Yes.
I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about like your process in creating this legislation, helping to craft this legislation, and why that was really important for you to make
Yes.
law. And how you
Yeah.
and I've heard you tell this story before, and I loved it. And about like how in Jefferson County the expansion of voting rights in the jail. So I would love for you to share that
Yes.
story here.
Yeah, the story of the time I was crying in a jail
Yeah.
is what this is. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
And I also want to like give credit where credit is due. So we just talked about how I am hopefully going to be the first Latina to ever serve as Colorado's Secretary of State.
Mhm.
And I know that there is a fundamental difference between having the right to vote and actually being able to cast your ballot, right?
Mm.
And it's the second one that matters. Like being able to actually cast your ballot is what matters. A lot of the civil rights movement in the 1960s was about this, right? Folks had the right to vote, but they weren't actually getting access. And so in Colorado, and this varies by state, which is part of what makes it confusing. Oftentimes, I will talk to people who say, "Oh, I had a prior felony. I'm not eligible to vote," and that is not the case in Colorado. So in Colorado, the only folks who are not able to vote because of involvement with our criminal justice system are people who are currently serving a term of confinement for a felony conviction. So you're in prison for a felony. If you are serving time for a misdemeanor, if you are waiting for your trial and haven't been convicted of anything, if you are on probation, parole, if you are back in your community because you've served all your time, you are eligible to vote in Colorado. And if you have listeners that are in other states, I encourage people to check their Secretary of State's website because if you have prior involvement with our criminal justice system and think you're not eligible to vote, you very well may be. So check the laws in your state, but in Colorado, unless you're serving time for a felony, you're eligible to vote. And so that meant that I told you that Jefferson County, where I live now, is one of the largest counties in Colorado. Therefore, we have one of the largest jails. About 1,000 folks in jail on any given day, conservatively, probably 850 eligible voters on any given day. And I found out that in 2022, the year that I was elected clerk and recorder, only three out of those estimated 850 eligible voters actually cast their ballot, right?
Wow.
That tells you that our system isn't working, right? If only three out of 800 plus eligible voters are voting, your system's not working. And so I went to our sheriff and said, hey, let me put a vote center in your jail, right? Like clearly people aren't getting access to the ballot for one reason or another. And she said, absolutely not. Um, and
Okay.
so went to some of our community groups. We have an amazing community group here, the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, CCJRC, that is led by a lot of folks who have lived experience with our criminal justice system, who are just doing really smart and innovative things. And so went to them and said, hey, like we need to make this better. How do we do it? And so worked with them to craft that law and to pass that law. that made Colorado the first state in the country that requires in-person voting in every single county jail. And thousands more people, thousands more eligible voters voted from county jails than ever had before. In Jeffco, we moved that number from 3 to about 350.
Wow.
That tells me there's still work to do, but like that's huge. Hundreds of people that weren't voting before. And to the sheriff's credit, once we passed the law, she did testify against it, but once the law was passed, the department was a great partner, and they actually let some media in, even though they didn't have to. And one of the reporters was interviewing one of the voters, and it was a 29-year-old Latino guy. He had never voted before. He didn't know he was eligible. And but he's like, I came in because you guys were here, and so I thought I'd ask if I was eligible. And he said that voting was one of the top 5 experiences of his life, and it made him feel like he mattered. And he does matter, and we all matter, and that's the reason that we should have our voices actually heard. And yeah, so then I welled up, and the sheriff who was escorting us around like looks at me and is like, "Are you crying?" I was like, "Yeah." Like I am absolutely crying because
Like, no,
this
they're
is
cooking,
what
they're
it's
cooking.
about.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed of crying through this. Like I yes, I want people's voices to be heard, and so to have somebody say that like that's what makes them feel like they matter, I just think is huge. So yeah, such a privilege to work on that policy, and like I said, so grateful to the community organizations and experts that helped do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to thank you for that because one of the positions that I guess in public opinion could be considered radical that I have is the fact that
Mm.
I do believe people who are incarcerated should also be able to vote because I
Yes.
view it as an inherent right, not a privilege. And similar
Yes.
to how Bernie Sanders viewed it, I do believe it's something that like once you start chipping away at who can vote, you start undermining democracy, which we're already seeing now, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And most importantly is that I don't think people realize how much power the government exerts over people who are incarcerated. Therefore, I do deem it necessary that they have a say in the process and in the world that they'll be hope if if they're eligible to go
Yes.
out into or their children might be into. Like we often dehumanize them in a way that is very ugly and it goes we have a very punitive system. And listen, I'm not a person who does not understand that there are certain consequences for actions, but I think we should also start working on the rehabilitation aspect of things because when these people get out, we want them to have already had these experiences to go out better than when they came in and hopefully reduce the recidivism rate. So I just want to commend you for that because I know it's not easy to get people to see that community. They're not always viewed in the best light in terms of they're not the most sympathetic uh,
Yeah.
constituency, I should say. So thank you for doing that.
Well, but to your point, right? Like the whole point is that we in a democracy are supposed to have a say on the policies that impact our lives. And if you are somebody that is incarcerated in a county jail, you can argue that there is more influence on your life that you should have a say on those policies. And I also
Absolutely.
think that we have to name that people of color and low income people are overrepresented in our criminal justice system. And so I do see it as a civil rights issue if we are taking away certain people's right to have their voices heard. And you're absolutely right that like there is a correlation between voting and lowering recidivism rates, right? Because when you're voting, when you're participating in your community, you're increasing your sense of belonging, you're having a voice. And so, that correlation is also really interesting to me.
Absolutely. And I would love to dive in a bit if we can, because one thing that we hear so much right now about the SAVE Act. I don't know how comfortable you feel talking about that if you're
Yeah.
happy to. But what I love about Colorado, which David mentioned in the intro, is that your election system is already considered one of the best in the country. So my question is, if it isn't broke, why change it? Like, where do you think there's still room to improve what you all have right now?
Yes. You know, when we're thinking about where can we go with democracy, and you're right, Colorado has an excellent system. I was just actually at a national conference in Georgia, and one of the things that like boggles the mind about their system is they have a vote center model, which is the model that we have in Colorado, where you don't have to go to like the one elementary school near your house to vote. You can go anywhere in your county. But in
Hmm.
Georgia, that changes on the last day. So on the last day of the election, you have to go to the precinct that you're assigned to.
Hmm.
So voting early versus voting on the last day changes where you're supposed to go. And I just think that's confusing to voters, right? And if we have the ability to be flexible, right? I think one of the things I love about Colorado's system is you can vote any vote center in your county. So the one that's closest to your office or closest to your kid's school or whatever errands you're running today, like go to the one that works with your life. Um, is just one of the many things, right? But when we're talking about a more inclusive democracy, right? Because our democracy in the United States has never been built for everyone, right? Most of the people on this screen right now would not have been eligible to vote at the foundation of our country. And so I do hope that with all of Trump's tearing down that is happening, that we have the opportunity to rebuild systems in ways that actually work for everybody. And so when I think about making everyone's voices heard, I think about where are the friction points? Um, where are the people that just aren't having as easy of a time. In Colorado, we do have automatic voter registration. So if you get a driver's license or state ID, you're automatically registered to vote if you're eligible. We automatically send every active registered voter a ballot in the mail. So you don't have to do any extra work to get a ballot sent to you. You can then vote in person or you can vote that ballot that was sent to you. And we don't have 100% participation. We are usually one of the highest participation states. We're usually right behind Minnesota. I don't know what's going on there, but not everyone's participating, which means we're still seeing roadblocks. Some of the data I'm really interested in is we see higher participation rates among homeowners than we do renters.
Hmm.
That could be because renters are moving more frequently and their address isn't getting updated as quickly. There's a number of things that could be happening there. But, I think we need to look at who isn't participating in the numbers that they should be and how do we make it easier for them to participate.
Yeah, I would love to know if your equivalent in Minnesota, if you all talked and kind of were able to come up with some like what's happening over there. Because one thing you mentioned, I am a big proponent of automatic. If I have to be automatically signed up for a draft, I believe that we should automatically be signed up to vote. Like removing these unnecessary barriers, which kind of goes to my next question, which thankfully, you are an attorney, so you have way more familiarity than most when it comes to these things. But I guess it gets to the argument of federalism. What are your thoughts on the fact that we do have 50 different ways of doing voting versus having a system that's easy for people? You can move from California to Texas, from here to there, and it just makes sense and people understand what's going on.
Yeah. I think we'd actually be having a really different conversation if you'd asked me that question 10 years ago. We were all babies back then, of course, so maybe
Yes.
we wouldn't be as knowledgeable,
Just
but
just
um,
became an eligible voter. What are you talking about? Just got.
yes. So, but I actually think the conversation is different now in that, our Constitution grants the power to regulate elections to Congress and the states. And historically, Congress has used that power for good. The Voting Rights Act that was recently gutted by our Supreme Court, was Congress taking actions to tell states, and in particular southern states, that they couldn't discriminate based on race. And that if they did, there was consequences and there was oversight. And that was a very good thing. Right. Having 50 different ways of doing things in 50 different states definitely can have its drawbacks because it can be confusing for voters if you're somebody that moves frequently or if you saw a headline on, whatever news channel you watch that didn't apply to you because it was talking about how they vote in a different state. That can absolutely be confusing. I will say that one of the really good things about having the states be the ones that are in charge is one, federally, we are in a hellscape right now, and we are dealing with a federal government that is actively trying to dismantle the right to vote. And so I know that I trust Colorado a heck of a lot more than I trust our current president when it comes to making sure that people have the right to vote and that those with the right to vote are able to exercise that right. Um, but it is also a security feature that it is physically impossible to interfere or hack the elections nationally because it is separate systems in every state. And I think that is really valuable, particularly in this moment.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for kind of walking through that because I do think there is a lot of confusion because of and I
Mhm.
think it's by design.
There is. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's all this talk about, well, our elections aren't safe. Our elections aren't safe. The immigrants are voting. And in my brain, I'm very fortunate where I live in Virginia. Voting has never been an issue. I've never had long lines. I go cast my vote and I'm gone. I have to show an ID when I get there. They just check it, and it's never been a thing. So I'm
Yeah.
often confused. In my brain, when I hear what they're saying, I'm like, there's no way that a person who was undocumented could be voting in the elections. Like, what are you talking about? So are you able to kind of break down maybe some of the most common myths that you
Mm.
hear from the Republican administration in the office right now about voting?
I mean, that's one of them, right? The idea that there are people who are not eligible to vote who are voting. It is just, there is no evidence of that whatsoever. There is no evidence of any kind of widespread voter fraud. Even the Heritage Foundation, which I agree on them with them about almost nothing, right? Like they did research on this exact problem. They have it published on their website, and they literally looked at millions of votes because they were looking at the entire country over a number of years. And they found no evidence of widespread voter fraud, right? Nothing that could have had an outcome on the election. It is just not true. And often what we are hearing from this administration is not election security. Right? It is about trying to confuse voters. It is about trying to disenfranchise people. It is about limiting whose voice can be heard. And so it's in a democracy, it's healthy to have questions, and that is totally fine, right? You see something on the news and you're like, hey, like, how does this work? It's one of the reasons that in Jefferson County, we actually offer tours of our ballot processing facility. So as long as you are not like making threats, but if you have honest questions, we tell people, come see it for yourself. See that there's a chain of custody. See that your ballot is never alone with one person or one political party. Everything we do is done in bipartisan teams. Um, Come see every step of the process and see how safe and secure our elections
Yes. Yes. I've been an election worker a couple of times
are.
in Denver.
Amazing! I love
Yes,
our
and it
election
was
workers.
so much fun. I was at a polling site the first time that I did it. And so I was like
Oh,
helping people get ballots and fill out their ballots and stuff there. And then the second time I did it, I did signature verification at the Denver clerk and recorder's office. And it was so much fun and similar, like just being part of the process and being able to see it firsthand. Really, I was like, I've always had really like just faith in Colorado's election system, but to also be part of it and to see it like firsthand also made me feel a little bit more secure about like or
yeah.
just confident with the security of our elections. I also Day and I actually met in Atlanta about I don't know 12 years ago, something like that. And I remember voting in Fulton County, and I remember even growing up before.
That's I just toured their election facility last week.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And so what's funny about this is like I remember as well, like growing up, just watching the news even before I lived in Atlanta, seeing like votes come out on election night coming out of Georgia. And they're like, we're still waiting on Fulton County. We're still waiting on Fulton County. People are in line. And I remember standing in line in Atlanta, in Fulton County, for 2.5 hours to cast my vote in 2020 or 2016. And so it's like the fact that Colorado makes it so easy and knowing that you have played such a like a huge part in that, like thank you for like not only saving me time, saving me stress. I love that. And like you talked a little bit a few minutes ago about just like renters wanting to bring more renters into the election process. And I'm curious, like, what are some of the current friction points that you kind of started to allude to, and like how could you as the Secretary of State make the election system better
Yeah.
for more people, because it's already pretty great. So like
Yeah,
what else
it is
can we
pretty
do?
great.
What else can we do?
Yes. So in Colorado, the Secretary of State oversees the election for the whole state, and then the clerks and recorders, which is my current position in Jefferson County, but the clerk and recorder in each of our 64 counties are the ones that are physically running the election. They are, laying out your ballot to make sure that everything that you're eligible to vote on is on your ballot, but nothing else, right? If you, for example, you can probably only vote on the city council person that's for your district. We need to make sure that you get the right ballot that has that city council race and not the other one. right? So they're doing that work. They are hiring and training the election workers. They are physically the team of folks that is going out to those ballot boxes, picking up the ballots and making sure that we're verifying the signatures, that we're following all the protocols, and that we're counting those ballots accurately. And some clerk and recorders have large staffs. They have a full-time IT person or communications person. And some of our smaller counties, right, Huerfano County or Saguache County or Conejos, maybe you only have 4 employees total, including the folks that are, issuing marriage licenses in that office and giving you the tags to your car. And so I am really excited about working with the clerks to better support them and make sure that they have the resources they need. I think, even if you are in a smaller county and you don't have the 430,000 active registered voters that I have, you still have folks with questions about elections. You still have media asking questions that need accurate information. So helping support the clerks to do all of that, I think, is really important. And being out in community, getting people accurate information about elections. Um, Another thing, we just had a primary in Colorado on June 30th. And that is a time when a lot of young people, because of like maybe they moved into their first apartment after they finished school or something, oftentimes people are moving sometime around the summer. In Colorado, your election materials, your ballot is not forwardable. So if you moved and you didn't update your address and your ballot went to your old apartment, it gets returned to us. And we don't take you off the voter rolls, but we do make you inactive so that we're not mailing a ballot to somewhere that we know that you don't live. But that can present problems for people who move frequently or younger voters or folks who are in school. And so I think we need to be looking more systemically at that problem of how do we make sure that just because you didn't live there in June, that we get your address updated so that we get you a ballot for November, because you would have to take some proactive steps to make sure you get that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things I'm thinking about.
I love it. And I was like, I remember registering to vote. It was so easy. I filled out a
Yeah,
form and I was able to like email it to like the
yeah,
Denver Clerk and Recorder's office, and they had what they needed, or I had to include a picture of a driver's license or something, like a
yeah.
verification, stuff like that. It was so easy. So yeah, I love thinking about that. I'm curious, we started the conversation a little bit. I mentioned that I and interact with the Secretary of State's website and the Secretary of State on the kind of the business filing side. And you mentioned it as well that the Secretary of State is responsible for business filings, bingo, charities, and notaries. I'm just curious, like, what ideas you have about improving those other areas of government.
The book club finds this so fun because when I got elected as clerk of recorder, one of them made me a little crown that said Queen of the DMV because she just thought it was the most hilarious thing that she helped me like get elected to. She's like, "You're gonna run DMV?" Like, tell me anyway. I was like, "Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
voting rights expert and I am running for this office because I want to protect the right to vote." Um, and so I don't know if I told her about bingo yet. Uh,
Okay.
but you mentioned sort of at the top of this that I oversee 5 motor vehicle offices. We have more than 10,000 reviews, and with like a 4.8 star review on Google. Who reviews a DMV, let alone positively?
Yeah.
Um, and so it is something that we are really proud of, um, because we are actually serving the public, right? Sometimes that is really exciting stuff, like making sure that people who are in our county jail get their ballot. But sometimes that is just the day to day of getting people in and out of the DMV in a timely manner, right? We have less than a 2-minute average wait time.
Wow.
And yeah, like that is the
Talk to
stuff.
Virginia, girl. Talk to Virginia. Figure out what we need to do.
But that's the stuff that matters in people's everyday life, right? If you don't
Yeah.
have to take a whole day off work to go to the DMV, if you don't have to make sure you have a backup plan for how your kids are going to get picked up from school because you're not sure if this is going to take you 4 hours, right? That is the stuff that is important in people's everyday lives, and that is what government should be doing. It is also one of my philosophies that government should never make you feel stupid, right? We have all, whether it is, creating your business and making sure it's registered with the state or, updating the tags to your car, whatever you're trying to do. I think we have all had those moments where we've gone to the county website or the state website and you're like, I don't know if I know what these words mean, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to do it correctly and I want to follow the rules and I'm not totally sure I understand what the rules are, right? And so when I think about business filings, when I think about regulating raffles or bingos or nonprofits, it's about how do we make these rules really clear and accessible to people so that they can do the right thing, they can do it quickly and easily, they can feel confident that they filled out that form correctly, and that their small business can do what it needs to do. I've mentioned that I was a small business CEO, and yeah, I mean, I did. I paid some late fees because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm an HR department of one and I'm a marketing department of one and I'm doing all this other work and I did not fill out that form on time, right? How do we make it easier for everyday people to interact with government so that they can get on with the important stuff in their daily lives? And so that's my approach to all the rest of it is I would love it if people, left the Secretary of State's office whenever they had to interact and they're like, oh, that was great and I have extra time and so I'm going to go get lunch.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. And something you said in your philosophy is about the ease and building a sense of trust with your constituents. So I am curious, somewhat adjacent to your role and your background. I'm curious, we're now entering an era of AI. We have generated robocalls, deepfake videos, fake campaign ads, and tons of misinformation. So I'm just kind of curious, as a Secretary of State, how could you prepare for elections where voters may not even know what's real anymore? Is there anything within your scope that you could do to kind of help with that?
I mean, I absolutely think not knowing what's real anymore is the scariest part of generative AI. That what I worry about is people seeing things that are real, right? Hey, here's accurate information about voting. Here's what you need to know to make your voice heard. And people not trusting that because it's so confusing what is and isn't real. And I don't want to make it sound like all AI is bad. This is, and I had said earlier that I really believe in diverse tables. I really believe in all different ideas. If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room, right? Like get more people in that room. Um, and so one of the things that I'm proud to say I was wrong about is actually for our motor vehicle office, we have a chatbot that is AI driven. It is not searching the internet, to be clear. It is a closed system where we have uploaded accurate information about how you get tags to your car or the regular problems that people need to get solved at the DMV. And I sort of hate those little chatbots that are on websites. And I thought everyone was like me and I thought everyone did. I am wrong. Lots of people love them. And it has,
Me. I'm the
yeah,
people that love them.
Oh
I
my
love
God.
that for
Amanda,
you.
I'm team you in this.
But when they work, and that's the important thing is you need it
That's
to
the
work.
key.
But when they work really well. It reduced call volume. It reduced the number of people that had to stay on hold. Again, it's a closed system, so we know it's not making things up. You can get to a human if that automated system can't figure it out for you. And so, there are some places where AI has been incredibly helpful. And I think that we have a responsibility in government to keep up with technology, to not be scared of it, but to do so responsibly. And I think that is harder when it comes to elections, when we're going to see, um, nefarious actors who have an interest in dismantling our democracy, using it in inappropriate ways that aren't helpful. And so, it's a both and. We have to use the good parts and we have to continue to be responsible about growing with technology and thinking responsibly about how do we protect our constituents from misinformation.
Yeah. Amanda, I have the last question, and it's more of a personal question. And you had one of my favorite campaign ads this season. And it was with your
I
dad.
love it, right? When you
Yes.
say you like a campaign ad.
Right? Yes, right? I'm into this stuff too. So
Yeah.
yes, I was like, I'm nerdy for this stuff too. But I was like, you had one of my favorite campaign ads this whole season, and it was with your dad, who voted for Donald Trump 3 times. Some
Yeah.
might call him a triple Trumper. And I'm just curious and he's supporting you, a Democrat. And I have family who has also voted for Donald Trump. And I know that politics can seem so polarizing in a lot of ways. when it's left versus right or Republican versus Democrat. I'm actually an unaffiliated voter. I've never voted for a Republican in my life, but
Yeah,
I'm still
the majority
unaffiliated.
of Coloradans are unaffiliated.
That's true. That's true. So I'm just curious if you would be willing to share some tips for navigating family dynamics, friend dynamics
Yeah.
with parents, friends, family members who may have voted differently than you and maybe have some different politics than you.
Yeah. And, I'm a voting rights lady and I'm running for a position that is not legislative. It is about running an office, protecting the right to vote. And so, I won't be voting on legislation that has to do with climate change or guns. Like that is not where I will be. And I haven't actually asked him this, but I think he would have had a harder time being in that video and being as supportive as he's been. My dad, came and helped me collect signatures to get on the ballot when I was running for clerk. My family has been really amazing, even though we do have really, really different politics. I'm not sure he would have been able to do that for me if I was running for like a legislative position. But what he said about my current role is, he's like, I you're not trying to rig anything. Like you want fair elections and I want fair elections. And that should be the one thing that we can all agree on is that our democracy should be fair, it should be transparent, it should be accessible. And I am lucky that that is something that we absolutely agree on. We don't agree on a whole lot else. um, and there were times when I would walk in the door and, my dad is somebody that I grew up my whole life listening to Limbaugh because that's always what was on in his
Mm.
truck. And there is literally a not me, us AOC poster right next to my desk. And so I would walk in and, he would jump into oh, did you see the thing that AOC did, blah, 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 blah. But he knows we disagree. We're going to, um, and I ended up just saying that to him. And it was like, hey, I can show up here and you can launch right into the thing we disagree on and I'll own you. It's fine. But
Period.
I don't I don't really want to spend that whole time arguing. It doesn't make me feel closer. I don't think it makes you feel closer to me. I would rather spend our time together on some of the stuff that we do agree on. Let's talk about my nephews. Let's talk about my parents' awesome dog. Let's talk about how their work is going. And and I kind of said what's your goal? Because I don't feel like this is making us closer. And he really heard that. And we do kind of shy away from the politics of the day on a regular basis because we don't necessarily see it the same way. But I am lucky in that we both see that I will defend his right to vote till my dying day, even though he votes differently than I do. And I think he would do the same for me. And then I will also just acknowledge that sometimes that is hurtful. My best friend in law school was a devout Mormon. I am a out bi lady, and that was shortly after Prop 8 in California, where I'm from. And boy, oh boy, was I having a hard day when that all went down. And I walked into a law school class, and I was sitting next to my best friend, and he goes, "Are we friends today?" And I said, "Not today.
Mm.
We will get there, but today I'm hurt and mad." Because
Mm.
this policy has real impact on people's lives and sends a real signal about who is welcome and who is heard. And so, eventually we were able to move forward on a day that I was less hurt and mad. And so that's real too, right? We don't have to not own our humanity and not own that these policies and practices and some of what is currently coming out of the federal government is really detrimental to people's lives, and that both of those things can be true at the same time.
Absolutely. And I just want to commend you for sharing that because unfortunately, I don't see that changing. I feel like, as you know, we talk about, we were 8, 10 years ago. So now going in this direction, I feel like it's increased in terms of how tense and how relevant politics is to our everyday life. So thank you for sharing that. And I just want to say, if you grew up listening to Limbaugh, I feel like at this point you should be entitled to compensation. So we need to figure out what we need to do. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yes.
Yes,
My dad and his choices of AM radio.
right. Yes. Well, that's the thing. It's probably that's the thing. It was like there's limited choice in talk radio. It's kind of especially conservative. I grew up in rural Western Nebraska, so similar, very conservative. But I was like, it's where I learned the value of community. It's where I learned the value of community, and it's also like I have friends who also voted for Donald Trump 3 times, and I talked about this on the podcast about 9 months ago. I was invited to the Uray County Lincoln dinner with the
Oh,
Republican.
wow.
Yeah, and I went with my friends, and I didn't necessarily agree with some of the policies that they were talking about, but like I was greeted with such warmth and kindness by the people who were there, because they wanted me to feel included, even if I didn't necessarily have some of the same beliefs. So it's possible. It's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, and we have to hold the truths of the harm that is created, and the humanity of the folks who disagree with us.
Yeah, I
That is all
agree.
true. Yeah.
Amanda
And
Gonzalez,
now people
thank
don't have to
you.
listen to AM radio because they have fabulous podcasts that they can listen to instead.
Thank
Is
you.
there
That's
one
how
that
we
you would like to
created
tell
this.
people to listen to? Is there one, Amanda, you would recommend?
I mean, I heard there's this really lovely something about limbo. I think it's really, really great. It's a great
That's
alternative, kind of sounds like limbo, but way, way better.
Yes,
Call me.
yes.
Well, I
Replace
think I've heard
limbo with
about.
limbo. That's right.
Yes. Replace Limbaugh with limbo. I like that. Bumper stickers.
I like
Yes.
this. Yes, I like that. So yeah. Amanda Gonzalez, thank you so much. Where can people follow you, support you? I imagine the campaign probably still needs some donations. Where can
Yes,
people donate to you?
absolutely. Yes, we put everything we had into this primary, and so now we won that, which is great, and now we have to go win a general election. I am up against, on the Republican side, somebody who used to have a bunch of free Tina Peters
Oh
swag.
yeah.
So opposes mail ballots. We're really different, and it is important that we protect the right to vote and win this thing in November. So you can find me at Amanda for Colorado all over the internet. Website is Amanda for Colorado FOR. We're on Instagram and Threads and Facebook and all the places. So would love to have volunteers, would love to have donations, get involved with the campaign at amandaforcolorado.com.
Yes. Well, we will link to all of that in the show notes. But thank you so much for spending time with us and introducing listeners to you who our largest listener base is here in Denver. So many of them probably also voted for you, but we have to vote for you again in the general election, which is on Tuesday, November 3rd. You will be mailed your ballot 22 days before the election day?
So towards the beginning of October, you'll start seeing your ballots in the mail. And yes, make sure you make your voice heard. It's more important than ever.
Yes. So, well, thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with a friend, rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the platform where you listen. Get in touch with us at Call Me Limbo Pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads, or send us an email at callmelimbopod@gmail.com. Go subscribe to our Substack, callmelimbopod.substack.com, or go become a Patreon member at patreon.com/callmelimbopod. And Day and Amanda, it's like my friend Amanda Gonzalez always says, replace limbo with limbo.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Thank
on
you for
that
that.
note,
Thank you for
yes,
that.
that was good. And on that note, everybody, thank you so much for listening. And remember, when they go low,
we elect Amanda Gonzalez to become Colorado's next Secretary of State.
So call me
Limbo.
Limbo. Bye.
Bye.